welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to I think what could be probably my final character analysis of Season 4. This one's a little bit later than the rest. I apologise for that, it's just been a busy couple of weeks. But this is the final one. From this point on, just expect, me to be talking about scenes, key moments, how the characters' relationships have evolved throughout the episodes. I'll probably be ranking the season in regards to the other seasons, ranking the episodes, talking about how characters have done certain things because of one thing or another. But in this video, potentially the final character analysis of Season 4 is obviously going to be Daniel LaRusso. Now, Daniel's had quite an interesting arc this season. I think what really stuck out to me was the training between him and Johnny at the start of the season, where they're struggling with each other, they're sort of finding their balance. And I think Daniel's arc this season, while it's frustrating to see Daniel struggle and not embrace any kind of philosophy that isn't his own or from Miyagi, I think what really holds true is that I can believe that. That makes sense. You got to think about it from Daniel's perspective, that Daniel was taught in the Miyagi legacy and was always led to believe that Cobra Kai's way of doing things was bad. It wasn't just bad, it was wrong. It was pretty much immoral. It was just this is where Johnny and Daniel disagree on a fundamental level. And as the season progresses, as I talked about in the Johnny video, Johnny does evolve to a point where he starts using defense himself. And then Eli uses the newfound defense with his offense to win the title. It's all these great moments. Tori uses defense as well to help her get to the final. There's so many instances where, even though striking first and aggression takes center stage this season, I think defense is like an undertone. It plays off in the background, just as an undertone to the rest of the season, where it's not outwardly in your view, but it's there. And I really think this season could have done a bit more in regards to making me feel more emotionally for Daniel. I think, my prediction before the season came through was that in Season 3, Johnny needed Daniel. In this season, I said Daniel would absolutely need Johnny, and that holds true. He really did need Johnny this season. Which kind of really bothered me that they split halfway through, but I've talked about that before. But this season, more than any other, tests Daniel. It tests Johnny, for sure, because, this is Johnny's, full redemption story in this show, but I think Daniel more so, because of the legacy of not just Cobra Kai against him, Kreese against him, but then you throw Silver into the mix and the history that Terry and Daniel have. I genuinely believe, and I'm calling this now, they are going to have Daniel and Silver fight down the line, but they're going to build up to it. They're going to save it. They're going to save it as a special moment, because when it happens, I genuinely wouldn't be surprised, and I've said this in my recent live streams, I think what will happen is something bad is going to happen to another character, and Daniel's going to have a full-on Johnny moment. Full-on Johnny moment from Season 3. He's going to storm into that dojo, and it's going to play out like... And spoilers for No Way Home if you haven't seen it. Right, so spoilers. But it's going to play out like the scene where Peter is beating up Norman. Like, he's beating up Norman in, revenge of what Norman did to Aunt May. It's going to play out like that, where Daniel loses control. Miyagi-Do in defense goes out the window and he goes full on offense. And I think people might actually feel so sympathetic for Daniel in that moment. That Daniel has tried his best, even throughout parts of the show, from beginning to now, he's tried his best most of the time to take the high ground in situations. But where Daniel breaks, I mean, that could be hard to watch, especially if you're a big fan of the original trilogy and the Miyagi legacy. And you just have this image of Miyagi, looking down upon Daniel. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? I could totally see that happening down the line. But across the season, Johnny and Daniel just can't put their differences aside. They keep bickering, they keep arguing. And there are moments, there are glimpses throughout the season where these two really connect. They really connect and they really understand each other. One of my favourite parts of the whole season is in episode 2, when they're at the hockey place. And Johnny's like, "Hey ref, spearing, double minor," and he puts Daniel in a situation where Daniel has to strike first. He has pretty much no choice. It's either stand there and take an ass beating, or you strike first and deal with it. And what's great about it is Johnny indirectly learns from Daniel. No be there. He's being sarcastic, but he learns at the same time. That's what I mean. These two are a yin and yang. They are perfectly matched. Yes, Daniel got the win in the 1980s, but by and large, they are yin and yang. They are balance. You cannot have one without the other. As was seen in the mid-season, when these two were too busy fighting like school children while Hawk was getting his hair shaved off. Good stuff. When they landed the final hit on each other, they both went down at the exact same time. The exact same time. If that doesn't reaffirm that these two are yin and yang and balance, I don't know what is. It's almost like you could treat it as such, where Daniel is like a Jedi and Johnny's a Sith, and they're both like trying to find the middle between both. That's what they're trying to do. Then you go a bit further into the season, and we really sort of see Daniel's bond with Anthony. And this is where Anthony's character actually fascinates me, and I love what they're doing with him. Is, as much as we all thought Anthony was an annoying little, piece of, and he is, and he deserved to get a beating this season. He got off scot-free in my opinion. I think Kenny deserved to do a whole lot more to him, because we haven't really liked Anthony since the start of the show. But I think where Anthony is going to go is going to be the traditional kind of Miyagi-Do inspired kind of character. I think Sam is a bit more of a free spirit. She's a bit more of a striking first individual. I think she always has been. Even though she's, LaRusso 2.0 and heir to that legacy, I think Anthony might be more in line for that legacy than she is. Because Sam has so many tendencies and, situations where she doesn't take to the Miyagi-Do approach more. She prefers the Johnny method of, striking first. She's taken a real shine to that, and I think you're only just starting to scratch the surface of that. Yeah, she loves Miyagi-Do, and, she's loyal to that and all that kind of stuff. But I think this season has showed in, like as I said in my recent Sam video, that she's taken a real shine to it. It's something that she really enjoys. Anthony, however, I believe Miyagi-Do will be not just perfect for him and beneficial, but I think he will be the next prodigy. I think he will be the absolute next in line to take over that LaRusso legacy. I think if you're looking for someone to really take on the Miyagi-Do legacy, I don't think it's Sam. I think it's Anthony. As I said, Sam's cool, but Sam, I think, is more approachable to the other style. I think Anthony could not only benefit from Miyagi-Do, but really sort of embrace the teachings, especially when he's looking at the scroll. The look of elation on his face when he's looking at it, and the feeling of, oh, what's this? What have I uncovered? It's almost as if it's the same kind of feeling that Hawk had, when Hawk had that moment in episode 1. He's drinking the, he's having a drink, and he looks at the Okinawan sparring deck picture, and he's fascinated, he's enamored with it, and then it pays it off later in that episode. But you really sort of see, aside from that, you see the relationship of Daniel and Anthony across this entire season, where I think everything comes full circle, and I think we get some really much needed details on him. I know everyone was really quick to jump the gun and hate Anthony for saying, he doesn't care about Mr. Miyagi in that way. But I actually understand him. I get him. Because imagine this. You are born into a family that is rich and wealthy. They weren't born that way, but you know what I'm saying. You're born into a family that's rich and wealthy. Your name is, he's got the Harry Potter effect. People know who he is before he's even born. Like, it's crazy. And then you've got your sister, who's the golden child. Like, she's the most loved person. Even Daniel's family member said, why do you love your daughter more than your son? They even said it themselves. And I think that's the level of neglect, is that as much as Daniel and Robbie's bond was great, and I love Daniel and Robbie's bond, that could have been more utilized with Daniel paying attention to Anthony, and Anthony learning all of his lessons off of the internet and bowing to peer pressure is an example of where Amanda and Daniel have really failed Anthony in many regards. Yeah, there's a lot of decisions and a lot of choices that he makes that are his own fault, for sure. But at his age, you need someone to absolutely guide you. And I think what really drives it home, the line that Daniel says to him, after he gets Anthony to clean the cards, and Anthony pays that guy to do it, and Daniel flips out at him, rightly so, and says, just go play your video games. Like, that tells you instantly, if you're a kid and you hear your parents say that to you, you're going to feel worthless. You're going to feel like, well, when you keep telling someone something, eventually they're going to start to believe it. And maybe that's Anthony's problem, is he doesn't just feel out of the loop, as he said. Maybe he feels like he doesn't measure up. He doesn't match up to this LaRusso legacy. He's not Sam. He's not his sister. He's not his father. He's the outsider of the whole situation. And I think going forward, Kenny and him will take center stage in terms of rivalries, because Tori and Sam are going to bury the hatchet, Miguel and Robbie are going to bury the hatchet, so they do need a rivalry to kind of keep things fresh and keep them going. So that will definitely be the focus. But I think the bond between Daniel and Anthony is just kicking off. It's just getting started. And I think we really start to see this season why Anthony is the way he is. And I think in part it's due to Daniel and Amanda not really paying much attention to him. Look at the difference. Look at the difference one scene made. And this is where, as I said, Daniel and Johnny are yin and yang, okay? When Anthony sat there in his room, and it looks like he's kind of learned his lesson, Daniel says, okay, it's not good to be a bully, but at least you're learning your lesson. And his little iPad starts, having notifications. And Daniel's like, what are you doing? I remember watching that thinking, Daniel, you better put this kid in line now. Come on, that's enough. And not only does he break the iPad, he yells quiet at him. And Anthony quivers, like he shakes. He pulls back like, whoa. Because they've been so lenient and easygoing with Anthony that he can push buttons, he can push barriers, he can break boundaries and get away with it. And that is exactly what he's been doing for years. That's why he's joined the group that he did, picking on Kenny to make himself look cool with his new friends. And it wouldn't surprise me if he barely knows any Miyagi-Do stuff. He probably knows next to nothing. Because if you remember the flashback in Season 1, Sam and Daniel were training, and it was a heartfelt scene. But Anthony's just been left out of the loop. So that scene where they're like, come on, Lapusso, bust out some of that Miyagi shit. He probably barely knows anything. He's probably never really had that kind of desire to go and do it, because they've never really had that desire for him. But then Daniel says to him, you're the only person that's ever landed a kick on Miyagi. They put that there for a reason. They put that there for a specific reason. And not only that, he said one day you'll be protecting this family. That's what I mean. I think Anthony's long-term arc is going to be taking over the Miyagi-Do legacy. I really think it's going to be him. I think Sam is as amazing as she is. I can see a different future for her. As I said, a lot of these kids are evolution. But Anthony is one of them characters that I feel like is just being set up for more. And Daniel and Anthony's bond will get stronger now because of this. And that's in part to Johnny. If it wasn't for Johnny giving Daniel that offensive style of fighting, Daniel would have just let Anthony walk all over him again. So that's another reason why Daniel and Johnny should really just put it aside and come together. And as I said in the Johnny video, the reason why they lost is because Johnny and Daniel spent the whole season bickering. They spent the whole season bickering. They failed their kids. The kids didn't fail. They failed the kids. They allowed Silver and Kreese to take over. And then you should have realized, Daniel of all people, Silver's in the mix. Nothing's off the table. This guy could pay the refs off. This guy could bribe people. Like, he should have known that this was the kind of person that has now entered the scene. And I really wanted to see more of that PTSD element. One of my favourite scenes this season, I think one of everyone's favourite scenes, is when Johnny's like, alright, LaRusso, we need to talk. And then Daniel's like, what the hell? And it cuts to Terry and Kreese walking in as the flashbacks are playing to Karate Kid 3. Absolutely amazing. I wanted more of that. I really, really wanted more of that. Just to see the emotional aspect for Daniel. There are parts across this season, like when Sam flicks the bottle cap and the camera pans on Daniel. He has this kind of sad expression on his face, like he's losing control of everything. I wanted more of that. I wanted to see all those little details of why we should still care about Daniel. Because as much as we love Johnny, like, Daniel is the Karate Kid. He is the original. You know what I mean? Like, it's... And then it all comes full circle in the All Valley when he's like, you didn't win the right way. And it's just like, okay, Daniel, come on. She got the win. And then eventually, at the end of the story, he's like, you know what, Johnny? Let's team up again. I was wrong, blah, blah, blah. And Johnny was like, I was wrong too. And that's what it was about. It wasn't that Daniel was wrong. It wasn't that Johnny was wrong. They were both wrong. They both couldn't put their pride aside and do what needed to be done. That's why they lost. You could say, all right, Silver paid the ref off. Yeah, true. But if they'd have still focused beforehand, Tori might not have even made it to the final. You know what I mean? Like, the whole tournament would have played out completely differently if these two had just worked their stuff out. But they didn't, and that's why they lost. And then going forward, I think Daniel is in a position now where he'll be spending a lot of time with Anthony because he can't be a sensei anymore. And I remember when the images were brought out for Season 4, and there's that one of Daniel looking at Miyagi's grave, I remember saying that that would be the final shot of the season. That would be either Daniel's going there in a moment of need, or it's the final shot of the season after they've lost. And I called it. Bang on the money. And who shows up? Chozen. That, again, adds a whole new layer and dynamic to this story. A whole new layer and dynamic. And what I love about Daniel in this sense is even though they lost, he had a backup plan. Daniel is a businessman. He's prepared. He's probably thinking, okay, we need to win, but just in case if the worst happens, I need a backup plan. He's now brought in the most offensive fighter in the show. Dare I say it, Chozen is a more offensive fighter than even Silver. I really believe that. I mean, it could go either way, but I really think Chozen just edges it for me just because of his determination to kill. You know, he wanted to kill Daniel. You know what I mean? But the rest of Daniel's arc this season played out where he started to see that offensive play does work. It's all about balance and what works for you, but using it in the right way. Just don't go too much to one side. Don't go too much to this side where you get walked all over, but don't go too much to that side where you lose your humanity. And one of the best scenes in this entire season was when the flashback plays to Miyagi and Daniel, and Miyagi saying, one day you will evolve, kind of thing. He's giving him the speech of, you will evolve this into your own thing. And Daniel's like, I cared so much about keeping the integrity of Mr. Miyagi's legacy alive. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. It's such an emotional scene. It's brilliantly acted by William and Ralph. So well done. And that's what's great about this show, is the tiniest details, the tiniest things, where they'll have a flashback from any of the movies and they will link it into the current timeline. It's great. Like, you could call it fan service, you could call it nostalgia bait, you can call it what you want, but it serves the story. It works. I don't know how the creators do it. It just works. And I can't wait to see where Daniel goes from here, because Johnny and Robbie are going to get Miguel, so that leaves Daniel in charge of the All Valley, in charge of, he lost that, in charge of the Valley, pretty much, where he's going to be mounting the defense, you know, and he can't sensei, so that's where Chozen comes in. And I said this in my other video, but I'm going to say it again. I really believe in Johnny, Robbie and Miguel's absence, the defenders of the Valley are going to be Daniel and Chozen, Tori, Eli, Sam and Dimitri. Those guys are going to defend the Valley. And then what's going to happen, at the critical moment, then Johnny, Miguel and Robbie are going to come home. And then, honestly, I'm picturing it right now. Ending of Season 5. Think of the Season 3 finale. The ending shot of Johnny and Daniel together in the back of Miyagi-Do with all the students. Picture that again. But this time, you have Johnny, Daniel. They are reinstated because Tori's now redeemed. Chozen's there. You could potentially have Kreese there. And then they look out. And you see Eli. You see Tori, Sam, Dimitri, Chris. What about this? Remember when Miguel walks in and Hawk walks behind him in Season 3? What if Miguel walks in, followed by Robbie, followed by Kenny, followed by Sean? I'm just putting that out there. Imagine that as the ending shot of Season 5. That is your army right there. 4 senseis, every kid that we care about, all on the same page, ready for the endgame event. The final, the finale, the big event where Terry Silver's army of NPC characters will be fighting the characters that we know and love. That's how you do it. And this is where Daniel is so key. I think Daniel's arc really this season is heavily slept on. I think there's a lot of emotional weight. And with these character analysis videos, there's a lot that goes on in a season for me to condense it down. This video has gone on a lot longer than I intended. But don't worry, there will be specific moments and parts across the season that I'll be talking about in regards to Daniel, because there is just so much to unpack with these characters this season. This was a very character-driven season. A very character-driven season. But guys and girls, I've rambled on long enough. Do me a favor, jump in the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts of Daniel's arc this season. Let me know, were you happy about it? Did you agree with him? Were you on his side? Do you agree with me? Did you agree with any of the points I raised? Or what have you? And with it being a Daniel video, the tagline for this one can be quiet, because he said it to Anthony. Honestly, I got chills when he did that. I was like, yes, yes, Daniel. I can honestly just picture Miyagi just like smiling, like just, you know, you'll see that image of him smiling, like that's the one. That's it. That's the tweet.